Hello and welcome to another Spirit of Nature video art tutorial, and today I am working in monochrome. I have chosen a tone of purple and a few other supplies here that I want to use in my Coptic bound journal that I'm going to be working in today. I love doing something like monochrome because it just means it takes another decision out of the equation. It's not about the different colours that I might use. I can only use this tone of purple, and I've got black and white in there as well, just to give me options of lightening and darkening it too. I love my Coptic bound journal because you can flip the pages so that it's always completely flat. I'll put the link below to where I got this one from. It's fantastic. It comes as a kit, so you get to make it yourself. I'm just softening a little bit of the seep through from other pages with some white gesso there, and using some matte medium gel to stick a bit of washi tape down so that I don't get lots of seep through onto the other pages, because I'm going to be using some really dark colours here, as you can see. So I'm just putting some of my acrylic paint onto the corners of the pages, remembering that I need to protect the rest of the pages as well, so putting a page protector there, and I'm using a dry brush just to start to spread this around the page. This is a Liquitex Basics, so it's not an expensive one, but boy is it a beautiful colour. And at this point I've kind of got a little bit of an idea that I want to have a bit of a circle in the middle of the page, but I don't really know exactly what I'm doing. I'm just enjoying moving the paint around and seeing what happens as I start to do that. I don't want this to be really sloppy, which is why I'm using a dry brush, and it's a really nice way to be able to blend my colours together as well. So just starting off by framing the page. And now I want to start to create some different shades of this purple. Like I said, I've just got white and black there just to help me to do some blending. I never use the black in this. Actually, I only use the white. So I'm just starting to lighten that shade of purple a little bit and start to bring this into the page as well. I'm just going to blend and lighten as I go in to the center of the page. And blending, as you'll see, is one of those things that, you know what, when you first start out, it looks a right mess. It's never gonna look perfect. It's always gonna look a little bit higgledy-piggledy when you first start doing something with blending. But it's just about keeping on going, layering and layering, bringing in the lighter and the darker. As you can see, I'm back at that dark color again, out at the edges, and just starting to blend those two colors together. So when I put the light on, I'll then go back with the dark and start to blend both of them. And the large majority of this video is me blending, because that's the biggest part of this project. And I left it all in because often people ask me, how do you get such a beautiful blend? So I thought I'd keep this in so you can see how I get such lovely blends. And I can promise you, yeah, it doesn't look perfect to start with. I've just added a tiny little bit of water there to my craft mat to help to move the two tones of paint together. I don't want to dip my paintbrush in water because it'll take up way too much of that water, and then I'll get a very wet page and it will all just turn out to be the same purple colour. So I'm just picking up a real small amount of water from my craft mat and adding it to the places where I want to create that blend and make it a little bit smoother. So as you'll see, I just keep going back in with the dark to darken the outside, and then every time I add some paler colour to the inside, I start to move out from that paler colour and work towards the dark again. So I'm just going to leave the music on and let you watch me blend. Now this is the point where I start to introduce some detail to that circle there. So I've got that lovely blend, and I don't want to disturb the blend, but I do want to give it a bit more depth. So again, making sure my brush is really dry at this point, and going in and just picking up, again, just using the exact same colors, but just a very small amount, and just adding them in a really light touch around that blended circle. So we start to get this sense of that lovely texture that comes from the dry brushing, and you'll see I kind of again work backwards and forwards between those two colours, working towards the paler centre, but just starting to bring some of the darker colour into the pale section and some of the pale section into the darker section. that's dry, I take this word stencil here and still using those same paints and a cosmetic sponge, just starting to add a little bit of detail through that stenciling. I'm not trying to get the whole words on there, I just want that sort of muddle of letters that just adds that really nice texture to the page around that kind of darker edge, so almost sort of vignetting the page with that stencil. And then bringing in this beautiful detailed kind of more of a mask than a stencil really. I'm just going to do exactly the same thing. I'm going to make a mix of the white and that deep purple just to get the right tone, and just going in with the cosmetic sponge and just dabbing around that mask. I don't want this to stand out. That's why I have chosen a colour that's very kind of tone on tone almost is the effect that I'm going for here. And of course you're seeing this sped up by about 3 times the normal speed, so it looks like I'm just kind of like dabbing away really really kind of carelessly, but actually I'm really taking my time doing this, making sure that that stencil stays in the same place and trying to make sure it doesn't kind of come away from the page as I'm using that sponge. Decided I wanted the centre just a little bit darker, so just adding a little bit more purple to that blend. I'm really pleased with how that came out. Now I have already stamped this beautiful stamp here using my VersaFine purple, same tone ink there, so permanent ink, and I've also used a clear embossing powder on top of it, and I've just stamped it onto just normal tissue paper, so that background will disappear when I stick it onto the page. So permanent coloured ink onto tissue paper with some embossing powder, heat gun it to melt the embossing powder, and now we're just taking away as much of the excess of that tissue paper as I can, so I've got less work blending that into the background. You'll also see that I've highlighted the circle there. That's much more pronounced now, isn't it? That central circle. I just got a matching Inktense pencil and drew around that circle and then activated it with some water. So now in with my matte medium gel to stick my beautiful butterfly down, putting a layer underneath and over the top, and that tissue paper will start to disappear into the background. It won't go completely, but we're going to do a little bit of magic with that same Inktense pencil again. Here we go. So just where those edges, this is completely dry now, by the way, so I've made sure this is dry, and I'm just going in where you can still see the tissue paper, adding in that matching Inktense pencil, and then just activating it with a little bit of water. And you can see as I do that, that bit of tissue paper on the background just completely disappears. And this is where it's really helpful. At the beginning, I literally pulled out all of my supplies that were their matching colour. So the Inktense pencil, the distress ink, although I don't think I even used the distress ink, the permanent ink, the VersaFine, the acrylics. So I just pulled out everything I had that was that matching colour. So as I went through the project, I always had the different options to go to that were the complementary colours for that. And now I've got some white ink, and I'm going back in with that same stencil and adding some more detail just to make that pop from the page. I use the Momentum Brilliance ink. I tried out quite a few different white inks way back to find one that I really liked, This one I like, it does show up and gives you that nice pop. I also do quite like the Distress Ink Picket Fence, but it's a much softer look, so it depends on the type of project I'm doing. But this I wanted to pop from the page, so using that Momentum White, and still sticking with that Momentum White, I'm now using this gorgeous bubble stamp. I love this. This is a Visable image one. I'll put the details in the description below. I'm not using the full stamp, I'm just using parts of the stamp around the edge of the page, and then also this little teeny tiny bubble stamp as well, just to complement that and bring that all together. And now using my Dina Wakley acrylic ink, giving it a good shake just to make sure it's all mixed. Whilst I'm doing that shaking, I think about some other things to do as well. So I have my purple pen there that I'm just doing some scribbles around that circle, giving the ink another little shake again before I decide to go in and do something else, which is to get my white pen, so my Sigma pen, and just again more scribbles. I'm not trying to make that a perfect circle, I'm just adding scribbles around that with the white pen. And finally, I'm going in and using the Dina Wakley ink there. First of all, just for splatters, getting rid of any that landed a little bit big there. And just when I think I finished with the Dina Wakley ink, I actually decide to go back in and use that to highlight the details of the butterfly. So I wanted that to be much whiter. So where the tissue paper is against that background, some of that purple is coming through, and I really wanted that to pop out. So I'm just going in with a very fine paintbrush, some of that acrylic ink, and just adding in those details so that they pop a lot better. You'll agree that pops a lot better now, and that acrylic ink is a gloss as well, so it adds a nice glossy sheen to that butterfly too. And now I'm just putting some more scribbles. I wanted that circle to be a little less circly and a bit more scribbly, so I'm not writing anything specific, I'm just scribbling with my pen, completely free form, and thinking about adding some scribbles down into a point at the bottom. So I bring back in my lovely mask here and decide that actually I will give myself a little bit of a base there and use that white ink to make a really kind of faint outline again. So I'm using a very, very light touch with this ink and just really fading it out. I'm really not trying to get a perfect impression of this, I just want this sense of this pattern there in the background. So that just gives it a very small amount of detail there, and it gives me that point that I want to be able to enhance with my pen there. So I'm just tracing it with my fingers so I can see where it is I want to go, and then going in with my white gel pen and just following on from those scribbles around the circle to just create that additional shape. And that's this spread finished. I'm really pleased with how it came out. I love the blending, I love the circle, and I love the detail and the texture from the stamps and stenciling. So I do hope you'll join me again soon for another video tutorial.